Join me today for a personal journey of sharpening wood-turning tools. From the very first system I used, that cost almost no money, to the system I used when I realized that spending a little money on sharpening equipment is well spent, considering the time and effort saved. And finally, I will show you my latest setup, and I will tell you why all my sharpening experience led me to this setup. If you're anything like me, when getting into wood turning, you bought a wood turning lathe and wanted to get turning straight away, exploring tools and techniques, but you didn't spend any money on equipment to sharpen the tools. It wasn't that I didn't know that I would have to keep the tool sharp, it was just that the sharpening system cost so much and I had spent all my money on the lathe and the tools. Surely I would find a way without spending all that money. So I turned a few projects and had so much fun doing so. But eventually, after turning with blunt tools for a while, I came to the realization that sharpening the tools was long overdue. Which brings me to the first system I used. I say system, but it's just a bench grinder I already had in my shop. And it's seen better days. The grinder has a tool rest that I would use to sharpen my scrapers, parting tools and rough and gouge. But the tool rest is flimsy to say the least, and the result was never consistent. I thought I would demonstrate in this video, but I was missing one of the tool rests and had to mount the left one upside down on the right side and couldn't get the angle right. Well, you get the picture. The tool rest was bad. My solution for this was making a few modifications, still wanting to spend no money at all. I made this platform with an adjustable arm that would help me get consistent bevels on the rough and gouge and parting tool. I also made a more solid tool rest that I attached to the workbench. It was not much more solid, but it did allow me to sharpen my skew chisel as well as scrapers. But the tools I had the most trouble with on the bench grinder was the bowl and spindle gouges. I tried to make jigs for this, but I could never get them right, so I ended up sharpening them freehand. The result, as you might have guessed, was unpredictable at best. Each time I sharpened the gouges, they cut a bit different on the wood, and I ended up having to adjust them on the grinder a lot. So with this system I could sharpen my rough and gouge, parting tool, skew chisel and scrapers okay. But not my rounded skew chisel, and certainly not the bowl and spindle gouges. Let's sum up the pros and cons of the bench grinder. The pro is that it's really cheap and you can get them in any hardware store. And that's about it for the pros. The cons are that it can sharpen only a few tools with any consistency, and even for that I needed some modifications. Unless you're really good at freehand sharpening, you cannot get good results on your bowl and spindle gouges. And the grinding wheels on my bench grinder are really too coarse to get a sharp finish. I have to admit, this system almost took all the joy out of wood turning for me. I realized that I had to spend some money to better the situation. I got this Triton system on sale. It's the Triton TWSS10. The system is a huge upgrade from the bench grinder. But after the first year or so, I've had some issues with it as well. It came with a support arm for jigs, but no tool rest. I bought a Tormek tool rest so I could sharpen my scrapers, rough and gouge and parting tool. It seems there is a universal standard for the fittings of these, and the Tormek tool rest fit perfectly on the Triton support arm. The one jig that came with the Triton system is the straight edge jig, so I could sharpen my skew with great precision. For sharpening the gouges, I bought the cheapest gouge jig I could find. I can't remember the brand, but it comes in two parts, where one rests on the other while rotating the tool in a fixed position. I have to say, I could never get this to work that great. The part that holds the tool would come out of the little nudge it's supposed to rest on, and no matter if I wrote down the settings I used for the tools, it seemed I could never get a consistent result. I had a hard time setting up the jig for certain cutting edges too. Let's see the system in action and sharpen a few different tools. Using the tool rest I can get a good result sharpening the bowl gouge. I always use a black marker on the bevel to see that my angle is right. Once the angle is the way you want it, it's just a matter of rotating the tool from side to side to get a nice sharp finish. You can probably notice the issues I'm having with the system. It has some wobble in the spin. This occurred after only a few months of use. I first thought it was a stone, but I've tried adjusting it and grinded it flat several times. It's the same issue on the honing wheel, so I think it's just the overall quality of the parts inside the machine that's the problem. I also use the tool rest for sharpening scrapers and the parting tool with great results. I used the straight edge jig to sharpen the skews. The flat skew chisel fits perfectly in the jig, and the rounded skew chisel is not too bad either. Once you get the angle by using the black marker again, you push the tool back and forth while adding a little pressure on the tool, and after a few passes the edge is nice and sharp. So far my setup is very satisfying. But the trouble I'm having with the cheap gouge jig was still making sharpening them a bit of a hassle. Then, the game changer. I bought the more expensive Tormek gouge jig. It's a one-piece jig that's attached directly to the support arm. Again, it fit perfectly on the Triton support arm. It has 3 very easy to control settings: the angle setting, the protrusion of the tool from the jig, and the distance of support arm from the stone. It comes with labels you can put on the tools so you don't have to remember the settings and can get the same result each time you sharpen. Let's clean up the bowl gouge I messed up on the bench grinder and try it with a few other tools. Extremely satisfying. This jig has eliminated the last reservations I had of sharpening. I no longer turn with blunt tools to postpone sharpening. Let's have a look at the pros and cons with this system. The pro is that I can, with added jigs, sharpen every tool I have with confidence. The stone can be adjusted to coarse or fine grit, and I can get a really sharp finish. The cons are that you need some jigs not offered by Triton to get the most out of it. It's more expensive than the bench grinder, especially when you factor in the different jigs you need. The quality is not so good. I have wobble in the spin, the stone is worn down quite a bit, needs adjusting and will have to be changed over time. And even if my shop is fully insulated and heated year-round, I've had rust on a lot of parts after just a short time. I don't see that in my other machines. And that brings us to the last system in this video, a system I just recently bought and that I'm very excited to try. The Tormek T8 Black, a system I have read about since I started turning as the pinnacle of sharpening systems. When I got a good price on this 50-year anniversary edition, I just had to go for it, finally. I also got the profile honing wheel as an extra, as I never was able to use the standard honing wheel on the Triton for my gouges. If you are interested, I will make a more detailed video on this machine with all the specifications and such. Let me know in the comments. But for this video, I'll give it a quick test and first impression. I can already say that a big con is the price. It's almost double the price of the Triton system and extremely expensive compared to the bench grinder I started out with. But it's not really comparable with the two as far as quality and end result goes, as you'll see. And I already had all the jigs I needed, so the investment was only the machine and the honing wheel. After a few tests, I can already say that the quality is another level, and the diamond stone feels completely different in a good way. Another pro and the argument that won me over is the 50-year warranty, so hopefully this will be the last system I ever have to buy. Let's give it a try. All the jigs fit on the new support arm, of course. It seems very stable, and with a more powerful motor than the Triton. And just listen to the sound of that diamond wheel. This is a whole new level of sharpening. I must say I'm impressed. I'll end this video with a summary of my experiences with sharpening wood turning tools and give some recommendations. If you are new to the hobby and think it's a good idea to save money on sharpening equipment, I would say you should reconsider. The aggravation of working with blunt tools and the hassle of trying to get consistent edges on a bench grinder is considerable. If you spend some money on a wet sharpening system with a few jigs, you can spend more time turning and have a better quality time doing so. Once I had the wet system and the Tormek gouge jig, it was a different world for me. And if you are serious about wood turning, I would recommend getting a quality system as a long-term investment. Or you can start practicing freehand sharpening and make do with a bench grinder. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.